Hello, everybody. Welcome to the non-regularly scheduled meeting of the Annapolis Planning Commission, Thursday, March 12th. We're here ostensibly for a work session, but we have a couple of pieces of business that we will get to. But first, let's have the roll call. Quentin?
Present.
Tom?
Present.
Diane?
Present.
Steve?
Present.
Alex, present? Bob?
Present.
Everett?
Present.
Awesome. Full house tonight. Okay, the agenda, we have two pieces of administrative business. One, approval of minutes from December 4th, 2025. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes as distributed?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
nays or abstentions?
I'm abstaining because I was not present.
Abstaining, same.
Same here. Okay. Second piece of business, administrative business, is approval of findings, SDP 2025-00017, the development of 15 Ridgely Avenue. So we have that opinion that's written. We've had several comments. And I think everybody's, at this point, said their piece on that. And so I'd entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
It's an amendment by Ms. Butler that just talks about native trees on that corner.
In addition to shrub, depending on the decision of the arborist. Is that,
Well,
Right.
native tree.
not to
instead of a
remove shrub, but to add native tree or native tree.
Yeah, I don't think a shrub would fit there because any kind of shrub is going to be massive and then be
Let's put
a
it,
problem with the
or
visibility.
native tree.
Right.
It says native tree. Okay, so do we get a second on that?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Abstain.
And Mr. Riley abstains. Okay, that motion passes. And Cheryl, I will get, I'll clean that up and get that to you, and happy to put it on the letterhead. And if I may have everybody's approval to sign it for the commission, I will do that.
Sure.
Sign it.
Okay? So Cheryl, I can get that with signature on it and make a PDF and send it to staff and to you, and we'll put that to bed.
All right, thank you.
All righty, thank you.
Have a good meeting.
All righty, take care. Okay, so that brings us to our work session. So as is typical, we will adjourn this official meeting, and then we will start our work session. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, so we're adjourned. So we're going to get into the work session, and this will still stay on YouTube. So let's make sure, so we'll go to the table. We'll just make sure we use the microphones so that it can get recorded for posterity if anybody wants to watch it. There's nobody else here in the room, so the usual thing about audience participation doesn't really apply here. But if anybody does happen to show up, we would entertain questions from them written on a piece of paper as we typically do. But at this point, we'll head over to the table and continue there.
Great. This is really good.
I should say, this work session is on Zoning Unlocked, the initiative from the Department of Planning Zoning to talk about consolidation and some zoning text amendments as part of their 4-phase program. This is phase 2. Okay, so stay tuned. ahead and just turn your mic on.
we've had for such a small city since the day I joined. So any opportunity to consolidate down a little bit and be a little more efficient.
Yep, thanks for waiting till those of us who weren't in town get back in town. So good
Yeah,
to
it's
have a
cool to
full
have all of
house
us,
here.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is it. This is like
This is it.
what we do.
A zoning nerd.
Well, there's some things that you don't know about me, Bob. When it comes to zoning, I care about this stuff more than individual applications and that kind of stuff. This is like futuristic stuff. It's very important. And even look at the Rorschach test that it is.
I know it's going to be hard we're going to pass the mics around when people need to speak, but that is important to make sure that
Yeah.
you can be heard. I'm just going to give some overview remarks. So the agenda is on the screen. It's the first page of your packet. The intent of this is to both go through some of what we've already shared, but also get into a more robust conversation about some of the topics that we think warrant it and are more difficult to do when you're sitting at the dais, and so we can be a little more loose here. This is part of an ongoing process. The Zoning Unlocked is a multi-month initiative, multi-year actually. It's a 4-phase process. I wish I had a slide. We have like our canned slide that we've been showing in all the past presentations, but we're in phase 2 right now. Phase 1, Tyler Avenue Complete Community Overlay District was successful. We worked on some legislation for the plan development guidelines as well in the fall. So now the focus is on simply trying to simplify our zoning map. 32 zoning districts for a small city like Annapolis is a lot. It's a lot for any city, really. It makes for confusing, really confusing for just about anybody who has property and wants to do something, trying to parse what zone they're in, what they can do, what they can't do. It's challenging. What we've come to see is that there are a number of zones that have either outlived their purpose, are redundant with what we already have, or the community is saying, please change this. And so what we've identified are 8 zones that we think could go away tomorrow and not have any adverse impact on the city. Now, we have to make that case. We have to justify that. At the end of the day, our role as staff and your role as a planning commission is to make a recommendation to the city council, and then they have to act on that recommendation and decide if it's worth legislation. We sure hope they'll do that, but we have to make our best case. And so this is part of that process. And we have some public workshops coming up. So March 30th and 31st, I believe March 30th is at the Bush Library, 6 to 8. And then the next day, this is a Monday and a Tuesday. The Tuesday night, the 31st, is at Pip Moyer, and we'll be basically doing a lot of what we're doing tonight, but having some more interactive displays and ways for people to comment, and we'll be giving the overview. And so we have an announcement that's going to probably be going out early next week, and hope folks from the public will join us at those. We're also going to some of the HOAs that are impacted by this, so that's my job. I'm get the job. I'm going to we're going to start by talking about R1A and R1B in a second, but going to some of the HOA communities and making sure they're understanding of why we're recommending some of these changes. We have some letters going out to cemeteries that are being changed to open space zoning, and assure them that that's not going to change their ability to be a cemetery. But just there's a process here that we're trying to be transparent and clear about. And ultimately, every property owner that is impacted by this will get a mailer notifying them. So, and that's another big thing, but we're preparing for that. Before we get into the rest of the agenda, are there any other questions about the process or?
Are you going to do it all in one big chunk, or are you going to do it in different chunks?
we're trying to do this zoning, we call it zoning consolidation, essentially merging existing zones with other zones as one big chunk.
So that could be a year off.
No, well, we hope not. I mean, we hope we can have some legislation by the summer. So I should have said, we're trying to have recommendations by late April, May, late April, I'd say, and then kind of a report. Nothing extensive. We're not doing another comprehensive plan. Just maybe like a 5 to 10 page type of thing that would go to the city council, and ideally it has your blessing. That's kind of the idea.
So just a suggestion there, and I think a lot will be determined by how the public meetings go, what
Yeah.
kind of sort of discussion or if there's any resistance to any of this, but ideally, you could have all of these consolidations in one piece of legislation, but if there's any controversy around any one of it, you want to break it up.
Yeah.
Because I could see the amendment process getting so out of hand that you lose lock on what happens, while on a couple of things where simpler stuff that's not controversial could have sailed through. So, but you won't really know that, I guess, until you sort of really gauge the public on that.
Yep. I agree.
We could still break it into smaller pieces then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, our goal, so in one of the past presentations, you may have seen, basically since, I think it was 1986, or 1998, I can't remember what the first date was. We doubled, essentially every 15 years, we double the number of zones that we have in the city, and so we're trying to kind of now.
Do you have a history? Do you actually have some history on it?
Yeah.
Because a couple of questions I had when we get to it sort of is more historical, and I don't know how much you've been able to sort of unwind.
We have a
the
pretty good
rationale
sense.
for how some of these things got to where they are, which goes a long way to, if you understand why it's that way, and you can assuage the fears that prompted that, it makes it easier to undo,
Right.
in a sense.
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing the rationale behind
Yeah.
the creation of all these different zones, looking back in history.
Like B3CD.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, every zone on the zoning map had a piece of legislation behind it where they had to walk through the reasons for this zone. We have done quite a bit of research into these, and I'm realizing I did not say who I am, and we should introduce Eric Lashinsky, Chief of Comprehensive Planning.
Alexis Robinson, Senior Comprehensive Planner.
So, yeah, we do have a pretty good understanding. And but there was a huge tranche of new zones that happened around 2004, 2005. And then there were also quite a few in the early 90s that came out of a Ward 1 sector study for downtown. So, yeah. All right, well,
It's like mid-career for you, Bob. So you should know this stuff, brother.
Since 1995.
we're not going to blame anybody for any.
No, I mean, I think it is sort of fortunate that we have a relatively new council.
Yeah.
And so we don't, I don't know how indelicate this is, but we don't have a lot of baggage.
Right.
From people who may have been involved with creating the status quo now. So
Yep.
that should help.
Yeah, and I should just say, every time a new zone was added, there was, of course, a lot of thinking that went into it. At the time, the dynamics may have been completely different. I don't want to diminish the idea behind some of these zones, but, they sort of start to add up to something that you begin to not even recognize anymore, the kind of Frankenstein map. So, so that's what we're trying to work against, I guess. So, well, on the agenda, there are some that I don't think are going to require that much discussion. We can entertain as much discussion as you'd like, but I think looking at the agenda, we think that things get more interesting around the BR recommendation, or at least that's when we have height districts in the MX zone. And so for some of these, we're proposing that they become MX. It's a more flexible, permissive zone, but it has height districts. And so we have a sheet, it's in the packet too, that talks about what those heights are today. And that's some of what we want to talk about. Make sure we're all in agreement on that. But starting with the open space recommendation. So this is fairly straightforward. There was an open space zone created in 2005 that was never really utilized. So of those, it's one of those 32 zones. It's actually not even on the map today. And if you look at the big sheet on the table here, on the left, now I apologize, it's upside down for some people, but the map with the green on it is the one that shows parks, conservation areas, cemeteries that are over 2 acres would all be put into this new open space zone. And we circulated some draft legislation at a prior meeting. We can share that again. And that's just something that we wanted to give a sense of what that would look like, but ultimately that's something introduced by the council. And open space zone would be clarifying definitions for recreational use and passive use. It would be clarifying that in the case of conservation areas, their easement language trumps the zoning, frankly. It might be more restrictive than the zoning allows. It clarifies the uses. We have some new conservation areas just in the last year. The one for Villages at Providence Point includes a large horse farm, and so that's, we have uses that allow for that kind of thing. So, yeah. Questions along the way is totally fine.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. I can see that Providence Point is on here, and some of the area that's not in conservation easement. Oh, never mind. I see. That is probably all of it.
Yeah. We actually got the polygon from Scenic Rivers Land Trust for that, so that should be
I
consistent.
just noticed where it went, and it does seem to cover everything.
You can see the one closest to you, Diane, that's the Parkside Preserve easement. There's some, Cars Beach and Ellen Moyer Park. The far left side, there's a large one, but it's for Kingsport. That was several years ago. So, again, we put this threshold at 2 acres, mostly because at some point you start to label every single tiny street end park. You end up with this speckled map that kind of undoes the intent. So, but yeah, this is a zone that, I think if we do other conservation easements of a significant size, they would go into this zone. And you can see most of the dedicated parks in the city are currently zoned for residential use for some reason. So they were never really rezoned. So this is pretty straightforward in our opinion, but we're happy to entertain questions.
You mentioned cemeteries being put into it. Would that mean that they become available for passive recreation?
It would be up to the ownership of the cemetery. Absolutely. We know there are precedents for cemeteries that need additional revenue. They do events, but it's really up to the ownership of the cemetery, I think. Yeah. But
It's a cemetery. Cemetery is just a use in the open space.
it is, yes. Yep.
So open space doesn't mean public.
It doesn't imply that it's public, right? Exactly. It just implies that it's preserved, certain number of uses where really any of the uses are kind of trying to figure out a way of
Sort of like non-dwelling.
yeah. There are some structures that are allowed, but they have to be an accessory to the recreational use, That's basically the idea. There are some provisions that really,
It's like a maintenance shed.
yeah, and
Like a welcome center.
Storage.
And there's limits to what that could be. Obviously it can't take up I forget exactly how And really, this would be the legislation that would create this zone. This would probably be a separate piece of legislation, just so it didn't get muddied by the rest of it. This is an existing zone that we're just trying to clarify and make some adjustments to. But
Yeah, one of our prior meetings, you had some proposed legislation that talked about that I thought was pretty straightforward.
yeah,
Which city got part of the open space?
yes,
That's why I was
yeah,
teasing about.
absolutely,
Center.
yeah,
All right, maybe too soon.
right.
I mentioned this probably last time that we went
Yeah.
kind of partially through this exercise. One thing to make sure we're kind of communicating to residents in order to help sell the idea for this open space, count at least 7 of them that would count towards the CRS activity 420 open space. So that would save, and now CRS community rating system, for those that aren't familiar with it, that would extend all floodplain or flood insurance discounts citywide. So the new changes in the NFIP program allow for those discounts to go citywide.
That's right. You mentioned that at a prior meeting. Thanks for reminding us of that, because that is a good
It's called
point.
community rates service.
Community rating system.
Oh, rating system,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
voluntary program that communities that are participating for flood insurance purposes can join, which this city joined maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. We're probably a class 7, I think, currently, something like that, or class 8.
don't know.
Class 7 or 8, which now means that the whole city gets about 15% off of their flood insurance. So this would add to the discounts or add to the points, potentially moving us up 1 class, saving an additional 5% per class that we move.
And would that include all impervious surface that we add?
So what it does is it kind of looks at all of the city's land area that is within the high-risk flood zone, so the 100-year NFIP flood zone, and it looks at that and says, what percentage of that are you holding off into open space? And by holding off into open space, certain percentages, you get points. Points calculate towards which class you're in, and which class you're in calculates towards which how much discount you get. And it used to be the program, the discounts only extended to that 100-year floodplain area. Now the discounts extend citywide.
Do they have to be tracks over a certain threshold size?
I don't know, but if you look in the activity 420, it will give you kind of that breakdown
Okay.
in the CRS manual, which can be just Googled.
So does that mean places like Chesapeake Harbor, which are not in the city, could induce them to join?
So only the city of Annapolis, anything within the city boundaries, and then anyone purchasing flood insurance from the NFIP would get those discounts. But now, because of the new risk rating that was adopted a couple years ago, they've extended those discounts citywide. So yeah, anything that is within the city boundaries, any person getting a flood insurance policy would receive those discounts.
So would that be an inducement to Chesapeake Harbor to join? Follow me?
To join,
To join the city?
Annex into the city.
oh, annex in the city? I don't know, because I don't know what the class rating for the county is.
They pay a lot lower taxes than we do in the city, so that might not offset it
Yeah,
enough.
I mean, it's not the taxes, it has to do with the CRS, and I don't even know if Anne Arundel County, so there's only 3 communities in Anne Arundel County: Anne Arundel County, Highland Beach, and Annapolis. And out of those 3, I don't know how many participate in CRS, but I know Annapolis City does.
All right, if there are no other questions about the open space, you want to grab it. We're going to get into the zoning consolidation recommendations. You can see the sheet is right off the press, blur. The print is not even dry. So we're going to start with, we want to talk about the R1A and the R1B. And these are, let's see. These were zones that were created long time ago. Well, in the case of the R1A, it was, oh yeah, you can grab that. Thank you. This was the 80s. And some of the idea was large tracks might have very low density on them. I'm trying to reach the original developer of Hunt Meadow, because my understanding is that this zone was created when Hunt Meadow, which is a community behind Annapolis Middle School, was annexed into the city to be a kind of suburban neighborhood that is pretty unique, I think, for the city in terms of the way the neighborhood is designed, and it's very suburban. And it has a townhouse module as well. So actually, I should say there's a mistake on here that I think we're going to have to correct. But the idea is we did an analysis of the lot pattern in the neighborhoods that are in the R1A today, which are Wardour, Hunt Meadow, and then there are some smaller tracts, a portion of the villages at Providence Point that is not part of the conservation, or I should say is some part of it is part of conservation, but it gets a little confusing. But you can see on the map there's two open space tracts. One is on the left of the one edge of the map there, and that's the area that you pass when you're on Aris T. Allen. You're coming into the city, the Rocky Gorge site. There's a portion of that is not going to be developed. And that's steep slopes. It's not in a conservation easement today, but it should be. And then the other OS tract is actually part of the villages at Providence Point conservation easement, which is the OS that's kind of in the middle of the map, right? Now, just below that, there's a little wedge of land that was kind of a set aside from the Villages project that remains kind of a residential area. There's a couple houses on it. And so that one we're suggesting become R1. But the other residential areas, Wardour and Hunt Meadow, primarily R1. It's just that in Hunt Meadow, there's a townhouse cluster. If you look closely at the plan, it's actually off the map on the, let's see if we can.
It's right as you come into.
Right. So the tricky thing with that is with our current zoning, the R3 residential zone is the only one, it's the first zone you get to that allows for townhouses. It's just one of the quirks in our zoning code. You know, R1 and R2 don't allow for attached houses. You have to get up to R3 to allow for attached houses. They could be the lowest density townhouse clusters in the city, but they still wouldn't be allowed in the R1 or the R2 currently today. So that's what we're thinking. I mean, if you look at the lot pattern in Hunt Meadow and Wardour, the median lot size is higher than the 7,000 square feet. That is what minimum lot size in the R1 today. But at least in Hunt Meadow, they have very strict HOA guidelines that don't allow for any subdivision of lots. You can't lease a portion of a lot. So the HOA rules really trump any kind of change that we make. The other thing to say is the R1 zone today is Admiral Heights. It's the majority of West Annapolis. It's Murray Hill. It's the Heritage community off of Forest Drive. These are basically single-family detached communities on fairly large lots. And so we think that that's consistent with the character of both Wardour and Hunt Meadow to allow us to remove the R1A zone and make it, for the most part, R1. That's the rationale.
So just to repeat that so I can make sure I understand it.
Yeah.
That the townhouses in Hunt Meadow would go into R1, but it's so that they would be non-conforming, or
No,
or just the homeowners association rules would govern that?
Well, actually, what I was saying is, I think we would correct this recommendation and have just that portion of Hunt Meadow be R3.
Oh, you would
Yeah.
change that?
Yeah. I think for them to be conforming, the R1, the way it's written today, it's home lots on about 21,000 square feet, which is large. I mean, that's like ranchettes, you know? So I'm still trying to understand what the original thinking was there. But now Wardour has lots that are that size, but what we found is those are primarily the waterfront lots in Wardour, which are really restricted by critical area rules. So they can't, it's not like you can develop the entire lot. And
What's
so
the current minimum lot size for R1?
R1 is 7,000 square feet, yeah, yeah.
Does it stay the same?
I don't think there's no intention of changing that. Yeah, yeah.
So then there maybe would be some properties in something like Water that you could subdivide,
Well,
if somebody wanted to.
I'm going to be talking with their HOA board next month in April and trying to understand if my conversations with one of the board members thus far, apparently they don't have any covenants that prevent subdivision.
Right.
It's hard to believe, in my opinion, but that's apparently
Well,
the case.
it's not really an HOA per se, it's more of a community organization.
Yeah, that's what she said.
So
Yeah.
it's the Water Improvement Association, like the West Annapolis Community Association.
Right.
It's just a forum for people to talk. They have some bylaws, but no covenants or deed restrictions.
They do manage quite a bit of community open space, and so that's a big part of their role. But so I think a lot of whether we're able to make these changes will depend on the interests of the residents in those communities and whether they see the logic here. But that's why we're going out and meeting with them, and we'll see if we can make the case. But
For instance, this big piece here, is that the part that's owned by St. John's? Or is that one family?
I think that's a single family lot. Yeah, I'm not. St. John's has a property, I believe, is outside of the city. Yeah, in the near the Dreams Landing community.
Is the intent to keep large parcels like that as they are?
I would say it's more about limiting the number of zones for simplicity on the zoning map in a way that does not have adverse impacts on the communities that are being rezoned. I mean, so I think we're not really making a statement about what.
Technically, they could try and subdivide that,
Right.
the way it stands.
The R1A, I mean, they could subdivide. It has a very high lot size threshold, so it does make it kind of more limiting to do that. But there could,
Is that really the difference, the main difference between R1 and R1A is the minimum lot size?
yeah. They only allow single family detached houses.
And one is 21,000.
Yeah,
and one's
yeah.
7,000.
Yeah, there could be a clause in the legislation that says, if there's any concern, I mean, like lots previously zoned as R1A,
Yeah, I mean, there might be some sort of
like to give them some kind
stuff
of,
with it.
yeah, I'm curious who we're going to encounter in the community that might see the value in the zoning change, something they want to do that would be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. I don't want to, paint the sentiment broad brush until we've talked to people. I just don't know what people are going to say. But we believe that these changes are not going to have any adverse impact on the character that defines these communities today. That's definitely a driving intent here.
Well, it's a non-issue in Hunt Meadow, I would say.
Right,
I mean,
not an issue. And we found,
It's only an issue.
yeah.
Could be an issue, or I don't know that would
Right.
be, but
right. I mean, there are, there's at least one duplex in Wardour that I'm aware of. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what people say. And ultimately, the council members that represent these areas have to be comfortable with these changes. But we think it would be positive for the zoning map and generally just how the city is guided by zoning. Well, if nobody has any other comments, we can move on to the R1B, which is, yeah. This one, Alexa, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Do you remember, this came later than R1A, didn't it?
No, they're about the same time. So in the original 1935 zoning code, there were 3 residential districts, and then that got broken down into R1, R1A, R1B, and then R2 and R3 were added a little bit later. This is also part of some of the annex pieces that came with the expansion of the city were put into those districts.
Yeah, that's an important point to note, that a lot of these zones came about when large areas were annexed for new residential subdivisions, or kind of pre-stage those developments, so there was some thinking about what the intent of the new development would be. And so in this case, Kingsport was one of those annexations. It's the left of the map. It has an OS and an R2 and next to it. And then the other one is the Parkside Preserve off of Forest Drive, which is in the far lower left of the map. It says R3 next to it. And then there's a small subdivision that's next to Hunt Meadow that's called Harness Creek Overlook. That's very small, and just a few streets. And that I don't know when that was actually developed, but it was after Hunt Meadow. I think maybe in the 90s or
mid-90s.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the recommendations here, they're basically aligned with the lot pattern that these developments ended up taking and how that aligns with the lot minimums in the other residential zones. So case of Parkside Preserve, it's a pretty dense development. There's townhouses and single family detached, but they're pretty tightly clustered to a point where R3 would make the most sense. The median lot size, I think, is around 3,500 square feet. So pretty small as far as single family developments go. And then right next to that Harness Creek Overlook is very similar to Hunt Meadow. Its lot pattern, it's not on the sheet, but it's very similar to Hunt Meadow. It would make sense as an R1, single family houses on larger lots. And then Kingsport, single family detached houses on tighter lots. So no townhouses, all single family detached, but pretty tight lots. And so that lot configuration is most similar to the R2 zone today, and R2 is, the minimum lot size is 5,400 square feet. It's the largest residential zone in the city. You find it up and down, left and east and west in the city. Large portions of the city are R2. And that also only allows single family detached houses, but on comparatively smaller lots. And then there's a large conservation area we mentioned previously that was part of Kingsport. Actually, 2. I should have put, there's another one, the south end of Kingsport, that would also be OS. And then the Rocky Gorge project would be R3. That one, technically, the plan, I believe, don't quote me on this, I'm not 100%, but I think that the plan that was once approved by the Planning Commission might still be active. Our director would have to confirm that, but, and that's partly why we're saying.
Why do you want to make it R3?
The plan that was approved is attached. There's a lot. It's similar to Parkside Preserve in the type of housing. It's large attached houses. Though the sort of lot configuration of that would be more sense for R3.
So.
Yeah.
So all of these become R3, is that what you're saying?
Why would
No, just the only ones that have the R3 next to them. So the Rocky Gorge in the upper left, and then the Parkside Preserve in the lower right. Those, you could argue that Rocky Gorge could be higher density if we don't know if that once approved development is going to happen. It's in a location that. Yeah, it's hard to build on, but it's also, it's the access issue that's kind of the biggest problem there. But it.
What if the previously approved plan is no longer in effect? What would one desire here? Because of access, okay? What would one desire there?
It's a great,
Why
it's a great question.
R3?
I think that's what I'm getting at. In my view, having it be more open-ended, R4 is our highest density zoning designation, and it allows for multifamily, apartments, condos. In that location.
Downzoning it to R2.
In that location, so it's think about where it's next to.
Where is it located?
It's next to Oxford Landing, which is a townhouse community that was built in the early 2000s.
With narrow streets.
Narrow streets.
And no place, not enough parking for the residents that live there now.
Right. And so, one of the challenges with that Rocky Gorge site was concerns about access from the Oxford Landing side versus the Harris T. Allen side. But, the only reason I'm suggesting consideration of R4 here is that, we don't know if we're going to get the access from
You mean R3?
R3, or even Bob mentioned something else. And so if we don't do R3, if the R3 is, let me just clarify again, the R3 was based on the fact that there was an approved plan that looks like an R3 zoning.
That best fits the.
Yeah. If that becomes no longer viable, the question is what makes more sense there? Is it something lower density or is it something higher density? What's the Goldilocks?
Well, higher density means more problems for Oxford Landing. Higher
Potentially.
density also means, on the other hand, a pressure on State Highway Administration to approve some kind of access and potentially cut through the median and a stoplight, which also would apply to the property on the other side, on the side of Harris T. Allen. That, however, is, who knows where that is? That's pie in the sky, okay? But more pressure on Oxford Landing is not pie in the sky, it's a reality. And so when you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I understand there's pressure for housing for people, but I also know that means pressure on existing people who live here already.
Right.
So if the previously approved plans have defaulted, or what's the word I'm looking for, died, we're freer to imagine something different.
Right.
you know, modest, single-family homes, which I think is R2. Okay, so that's,
Yeah.
I am thinking correctly on that.
The R3 would allow for both single-family or townhomes, you know, so that's maybe like the happy medium, I guess, as well. It's,
Well,
yeah, but,
I'm just, you know,
Yeah.
thinking, you know, Oxford Landing is really a mess because of, you know, when it was built, everybody said, you know, 1.75 cars per house. And now they're like 4. You know, you've got mom, dad's work truck, son, daughter. You next thing you know, you got cars all over the place there. And so it's like, is it unfair, whatever that means, to Oxford Landing? I mean, I just, now, you know, the history of it is that the previously approved plan would have died along with anything, except that Tripp Fulton found one building permit. And so now now you could allow that one lot to be built, and then everything else would become, you know, grandfathered into an R2. Okay? I mean, what's right here? What's right? What's fair? Because you'll diminish the value of Oxford Landing if you put more pressure on it.
well, you could also say there's an opportunity with that Rocky Gorge property to do something that is better in terms of the way it's apportioning its streetscape and open spaces and, you know.
Potentially.
Yeah.
As a planned unit development.
It's going to be a planned unit development regardless.
We could require fewer homes or more clustered homes and thereby open up more open space to make it actually a more functioning community than the way it's currently approved for. It's really lousy design, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, at the end of the day, I mean, some of this, when it's a planned development, that's the mechanism that larger sites use to get a bit more flexibility. They can, if it's a residential plan development, they can use any of the allowed uses that are allowed in their base zoning, in addition to some other uses for a portion of their property, a smaller portion of their property. So with the R3, they get a little bit more flexibility to do some single-family detached, maybe some attached houses. But through that plan development process, you can be sure that there's going to be a strong request for adequate open space. And how is that connection working with Oxford Landing? You know, is it reasonable? How's the connection working with the state highway? You know, I mean, it's.
And frankly, the planned unit development would come to us in terms of the design of it.
Right.
And if the guy comes in and says, well, I want to put 142 units in there, and we say, no, 75. Come back with us with it. You know, a lot can be done with PUD, and we have a lot more authority than we do in most other instances.
But if it's zoned R3, I mean, you're talking about a 3,500 square feet. It's not a lot of space, and you can put a lot of units in there. And if it's zoned such, then the developer probably has a lot more latitude than I think he does.
You would essentially, I think, with the R3, you're going to take the gross square footage of the developable lot, divide that by 3,800 square feet, and that's your yield. That's the number of units that you could fit on that site.
Versus an R2, that's like
5,400.
a third of an acre.
Yeah.
Whatever that number is, probably less than that. I don't
Even
know what it
less.
is.
No, I mean, even
Quarter.
less. Yeah. Quarter, yeah.
Let me go
Quarter
back
of an
down. Okay, this is helping me. An R3, which is, what did you say, 5,400 square feet?
R3 is 3,800.
3,800. Now, that means a townhome.
Yeah, I mean, it could be detached or attached, like townhome or a single-family detached. But the way these zones work, to figure out how many you're allowed to do, there's a minimum lot size,
Okay.
and It's 3,800 in the R3.
Okay, and what does that mean in real
This
terms?
means this.
Yeah, right.
Means Parkside Preserve.
Parkside.
That's great. Yep.
Look at, you,
Yeah.
I mean,
Fairly
it's a great,
large, fairly large.
I mean, it's
Those are
a,
the, these
it's
are
a
the.
3.5-story
Yeah, but they're townhomes. I mean,
townhouse,
they're-
but it's
it's
still
the
in a tight
footprint,
lot.
not the,
Yeah. So they're fairly wide townhomes, is that the point with 3,800?
no, you can
hours?
put, the point is that on R3, you can put way more units.
Yeah,
But you can also.
So we couldn't really say, if you could put 150, the planning commission's gonna restrict you to only put 75. We can't necessarily say that. That's not what
Well, you
the
kinda-
zoning is gonna
You can
require.
if you have steep slopes and places where they can't
Right.
build. Like here,
Right.
they had houses all here. This is Parkside Preserve, and we said, no, this is sensitive forest, and we're going to preserve that. And so I actually noted that you have the wrong picture here with the houses that were originally scheduled to be built there, and we said, nope. not gonna do
Oh, you're right. You're right. There's
Yeah.
a small, you're right. That
And
never,
so there are limits to what they can do, but we have to tell them.
this little
but with,
thing here.
with Rocky Gorge, what you've got is you've got a flat space.
Right.
And then you've got slopes, and obviously they can't build on the slopes. It's the flat space we're talking about. And, you know, how much, they're gonna come in and wanna jam in every possible unit they can. And it's up to the planning commission to determine, based upon the factors of, whatever, what's
Right.
built there.
And how much open space?
How much open space you require, and just, you know, what you require, and you can, as long as you make your decision based upon those factors, you can say, no, you can't build 150, you can only build 75, because you have to put in some common space in the middle, you know, you have to have playgrounds, you have to have, you know, you have to have the things that make sense.
There'll be stormwater management features and, yeah, I mean, so.
But if it's R3, you know, they're gonna come in with 150 units. If it's R2, they'll come in with
I don't know. I mean,
100, whatever the ratio.
yeah, I mean, we don't have the exact square footage or acreage of that property, but
Yeah,
but
talking,
yeah.
but you understand, we're talking approximations. I'm just
But yeah,
pulling
if
figures
you
out of the air.
if you think about R2, the minimum lot size being 5,400 square feet, and with R3 it's 3,800, essentially like 50% more for R2. I mean, less. Sorry, you get about if you had 50 lots on R2, you'd have 75 on R3.
Okay, here's
something
another
like that.
interesting thing. A guy comes in with a PUD and it's R2, and he says, he clusters townhomes in one space, okay, but leaves a lot more open space. Even though it says lot size, I think we can't, can you play around under a PUD? Can you play around by clustering things?
Well, that's like Kingsport. Kingsport has that area outside of where the housing development is because the number of units that they're allowed for that entire space, they decided to put in one spot and preserve that outer open space.
Okay. You can't.
Yeah, and I would bet that those were partly negotiated, you know, so that there was some. The intent was to have a pretty dense community. Well, the ask was probably we need to have some sort of conservation area to buffer that maybe, and you know there's some negotiation that happens there, no question.
And so what you have in Kingsport is you have fairly large homes built right to the edge. I mean, there's not much lawn space around any of them.
No.
But it's apparently highly popular. You know, its property values, you know, have risen. So it's popular for today's people.
Yep.
So if I could summarize to see if I understand, even if you made it R2, okay, and a planned unit developed, and I'm talking Rocky Gorge, basically. It's R2 and a PUD, planned unit development comes in. There can still be clustering on smaller lots in return for more community space or whatever, okay? So why would you make it R3, given the pressures that are on its neighbor and given that there'll be less of that open space? There'll be less of a green community.
I mean, I think that,
Necessarily,
yeah,
just be smaller homes,
yeah,
townhomes instead of
That's what-
single family,
yeah.
Yeah, no, well,
more units.
That's really
That's what we did here.
the R3 gives a little bit more flexibility.
Exactly what you did here.
You're absolutely right about that. I mean, the zoning isn't telling a developer or property owner how big to make their units. It's giving them kind of a limit or a threshold, but it's just basically setting their total number of units. Once you have the total number of units, based on the market, what kind of demand there is, maybe we're not building small houses anymore. Maybe there's a demand for a small house at a certain price point, or, that the developer makes that determination. But the zoning gives them a threshold, how many units total can you do, and what type of units. Can you do attached units?
I understand all
So
that.
that's,
I understand
with
all
the
that.
R3, you have that. With the R2, there's no chance for an attached unit.
Attachment.
You can't do a townhouse at all.
Oh, you
or
cannot,
you
even
cannot.
under a PUD.
You could do a small portion, but it's limited in terms of the amount that you
So
could
it's
do.
not till R3 that you can do.
Yeah.
attached unit.
Yeah,
That's the difference.
that's really the main distinction. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
okay, well.
But
All I can say is that, you're gonna be faced with a rocky gorge,
Well, it's
and
not
you're gonna be
necessarily
faced
taking up
with,
more space, it's just what's in the space.
right.
or what's not in the
Or
space.
what's not in the space, I agree with you.
I'm telling you, you'll be faced with a lot of pressure from some guys, who say, I can't make any money if I don't have 150 units.
I get it.
I
I don't disagree with you, yeah.
And I just think that the leverage that the city ought to have to make a nice community rather than the most the guy can build,
Yeah.
and still
So
make
that's
money.
the problem with all this stuff, is you wanna make it easy, but you don't wanna, there's people that are gonna take advantage of it too.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm just, I've been here a long time too.
So how much discretion, though? I mean, where's the line between, let's say it's R3 and the developer wants to come in and put 150 units, and Bob says, no, I only want you to put 75 units. Just help me understand the process.
I would say to make that kind of request, there's going to have to be that kind of difference in, I mean, there are plenty of precedents where it takes years that could happen, but it might take years to come to that kind of determination because they're so far off, the difference. But I think to make that case, there would have to be some very strong community sentiment against that density. I don't think it can only be this body making that decision. There's going to have to be some more voices in the room having concerns about that and that, but on its face, I think it would be a hard thing to say. We think it's too much, or, I think there has to be some kind of analysis of what's the impact of that density on the adjacent communities or, but.
It's also going to have to be, staff is also going to have some creativity and some willingness to push back against these
Yeah.
guys and say, no, you don't have enough room for, teenagers to hang out, or the things that make a community
Right.
really function well,
Right.
rather than just as many units as possible.
Yep.
So it's going to, the resistance, I think, has to come from a number of places.
Yeah,
And if the staff is willing to say, no, this is not designed well, and then the planning commission has got to be willing to back them, and the staff needs to know that the commission's going to back them fully and completely. And we don't have a landscape architect anymore in the planning staff.
Rob, you made a comment about everybody in the family having a car. How does that factor into these plans? Cars and parking and that sort of thing?
Well, the parking requirements are basically the same for, that, I think for, let me see if I remember correctly. I think for every single-family dwelling unit, I think it's two off-street parking spaces for a single-family detached. I think for single-family attached, maybe only one off-street parking space, but, so I should really find that information. That's a note, because I think that we don't have to make a decision tonight on this, but, it seems like this question about that, particularly that Rocky Gorge property, I think is something that you should have some more time to think about.
That specific property, I think it's a bit of a metaphor, though. I'm just trying to understand what we're trying to agree to and the precedent that it sets, because you don't want to go back and do this again 5 years, 10 years down the road. I worry less about the parking than I do about Forest Drive in that particular property, because the infrastructure already can't support the number of cars that are coming up and down that road as it is. I can't imagine building a community of 100 homes in there and somehow having cars coming in and out of there too. Like, I just don't understand where that could work. That's just different than I'm trying to wrap my head around the recommendation that it should be R3 to leave enough flexibility for the developers to come in, because they're going to run up against us and the community one way or another. So I don't think that it's wise to restrict the potential for that property or any other just because we're concerned that too many units would go into it. Like, I think that the natural process, community engagement, our vote, council, and the viability of the development itself will take care of itself. I think that what Eric is trying to suggest is that we should leave it more flexible and let the process play out in the future.
Yeah, that's it.
I'll second that, but I also want to, and when you're talking about the infrastructure and the transportation infrastructure in that spot, one thing I would like for us to consider, the planning department to consider, is that how do we also reduce number of vehicle trips per day and distance per vehicle trip per day? And I think that by sticking a huge number of residential housing units back in an area without any sort of amenities, that shops, something, increases the trips that we're talking about. So the number of trips per day and distance per trips. So I'm not necessarily opposed to R3 at all, actually. I like the R3, but I would also like us to think about how do we build in a way that we're not encouraging having to get in a vehicle for everything, and that reduces some of that traffic load.
So that would come in the planned unit development legislation, and what is required, what would be required in a decent PUD? Okay. Follow?
Yeah, and actually it's interesting, because if you recall the legislation that got adopted by the council in the fall with planned developments, there's a pretty significant density increase if we have that high value transit in place. The way that's defined today is going to be a challenge to meet that, but that was, to your point, the idea was we should be looking at reducing vehicle trips with additional density, but we don't have that infrastructure in place yet for that. So
those are the kinds of ways that you can, modulate or help these PUDs, change them. And
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay.
I just think that comes
as part of the process.
That's after the fact. I think that we can go through this process and kind of
Actually, can you move that
grease the
closer to him?
channels of
Sorry.
development that are more sensible.
But understanding, as you pointed out, understanding the process as to how it moves along,
Yeah.
and understanding what the powers of people, this commission or other, what it will be.
We just had a good example of it in your meeting last time. I wasn't here for it. I did sit there and watch the video of it, and it was the working group that you had talking about the property that was sitting dormant for 5 years in Annapolis Seafood. And that's a perfect example of how a developer would come in and way before they spend too much money on trying to get a plan in place, they're going to have to come and talk to the powers that be. And that might be us. It might be us just representing the community. But, Alex kind of was very emphatic with them that we don't need another gas station in that particular part of town. And maybe we need a fruit vendor over in Rocky Gap in order to get them done. But either way, the developer won't be able to maneuver without the approval of the community and commission and council and so forth. So I think that by consolidating and just simplifying some of this in the interest of allowing for those discussions to happen more readily and easily is probably a very sensible move.
Yeah. Well, we're not taking any actions anyhow tonight, so this is something that we'll take up again, I think, when we want to make those final recommendations, but this is pretty,
Well, clearly,
Productive.
Rocky Gorge is moving this,
yeah,
this portion of it,
yep.
so we need to, okay?
All right. So let me actually, we're going to move this. That was a more robust conversation than I anticipated, but I think it was good. I was like, oh, R1B is a boring zone, but no, I think you zeroed in on one of the parcels in the R1B that is definitely something that we should be thinking about. So, all right, the next few are zones where we're proposing to eliminate a zone and make it MX. MX is the zone today that covers a large percentage of Inner West Street, stretching from Church Circle to the Germantown neighborhood, essentially just almost to Germantown, right after Westgate Circle. And so you could see on the map, essentially the Severn Bank building on Westgate Circle is the end of the MX zone today. Park Place Hotel condo complex is MX. And it has a height zone designation as well. So the map we have on the table here, I'm going to actually flip to a different slide. You can see the three height zones. The blue is 65 feet, up to 65 feet. The green is up to 46 feet, and the red is up to 36 feet. And so there's some example images of what those look like today.
Two more.
Oh yeah, thanks. So we
more.
keep going. So yeah, it would have made sense for me to
Next one.
put this earlier in the presentation. Go one more past the BC,
Past that red one.
B3CD. Yeah, we're going to go back, but I just want to, this sheet is kind of a reference for what we're going to talk about on these other slides, the other sheets. Essentially, there's a recognition that the MX zone should not be universally tall buildings. There's actually, there's an existing urban fabric on Inner West Street that has a range of different building sizes. And I think the MX recognized that and understood that there's value in having this kind of range of building heights. And so that's the question at hand when we talk about these next few zones. What is the appropriate building height? That's one of the big questions. I think there's good justification for MX for all of them. I think we can question that too. But so the first one is this R3R. That is one of these zones that is only like a very small part of the city. It's just a handful of lots on Spa Road as you're approaching Westgate Circle. It's today, it's a mix of some townhomes, of different period. There's some stuff that was built probably in the 80s. There's some stuff that was built in the 90s. There's some stuff that was built in 2000s. And you've probably not noticed some of this stuff. The stuff that was built in the 2000s, you would notice when you're approaching Maryland Hall. You're taking that right or left turn towards Maryland Hall, and there's a group of townhomes there that you drive past. So what we're proposing is that group of townhomes, for some strange reason, and this is just something that should have been changed, that development is split zone. So a portion of it is R3R and a portion of it is R3 today. And there's a black line you can see, yeah. We're basically saying that the portion of those townhomes that were built together should all be R3. That would kind of be a consistent block. So everything south of this parcel on Spa Road is R3. And then we're saying everything north of that townhome development should be MX, and would basically kind of complete the area around Westgate Circle. It's a lot. There's multiple parcels within that, but oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's lots of narrow parcels within that area we'd be rezoning to MX. Some of those might be owned by the same entity. We're not sure, but we didn't do that level of analysis. And really, we're just saying there's value in flexibility in this location. It's adjacent to MX coming up Inner West Street. It's close to Westgate Circle. We don't have no sense of when anything would change here. And that just goes, I should say that's a preface to everything we're talking about. We have no idea when anything happens. It's just what would we like to envision in long range here.
So if I remember correctly, when we talked about this, we had a pretty robust discussion about this.
Yep.
I think it was mostly you and I, Quentin,
Those
about
particular
sort of
properties right there.
going back and forth between that being MX or R3, because it's sort of like what's there now maybe sort of more fits R3. But would we want to see something more like MX that fits around the circle better? It's a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever resolved that.
I don't think we did, but I think that there's some trepidation towards making something compliant non-conforming. And I don't know where that stems from. I think that it is completely okay for something to be compliant non-conforming. It allows for the life cycle of a structure that is currently in place to go through its life cycle, and then eventually someone can come in and say, okay, it's okay for us to rethink this space as that life cycle comes to an end. So I like the idea of making anything that we imagine could be a better fit for an area compliant non-conforming for that reason.
So you're thinking MX? You like MX better?
Yes, yeah. So something
So I
that,
thought your rationale, and I might not be remembering this correctly, but I thought you were sort of the other way around last time. But
maybe I'm misremembering myself, but I think that we were specifically last time talking about
no, it's that one little spot.
this spot right here, right? Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that.
But
and-
but I mean that sort of whole.
Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah,
And
this whole spot here.
cor-
I thought you were sort of arguing that should be R3 versus.
Oh, no,
MX.
not from my memory anyway. I think that this right here should be allowed to have flexibility so that
Okay.
if people want to put mixed use or business in this space, I'm completely okay with that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Same.
My only
Okay.
reservation.
Good. We're in violent agreement.
My only reservation is that the black line, there's a dead-end street, a residential dead-end street that comes off of, what's the name of this?
Spa Road comes off.
Constitution Place, is that what that is?
I don't know what the name of it is, but there's a dead-end street that's very residential, very stable, and I'm disagreeing here with Mr. Cummings, but that maybe that should not be included in this, in this suggestion. Okay. There, I say,
It's just the 4 or
There-
5 properties that lead up to Prism, right? That's what you're talking about.
it's behind, no, it's behind there. It's like, if you turn on, what's the name of the street that ends up in a street on Park? All I have in mind is Aristide, it's not that. Okay. You see where it says residential? Right above the L, the top of the L, there's a street that comes in from the right, and it
Oh, the
it dead ends.
cul-de-sac?
No, not the cul-de-sac below, outside of this proposed zone.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
If you turn,
Yeah, it's not.
what's the name of the famous guy? Amos Garrett.
Amos,
Amos Garrett. That's Amos Garrett that runs down. As you can see, it runs down, I think. And
Amos Garrett runs
Amos Garrett runs this
perpendicular.
way.
That runs
This is Amos
perpendicular
Garrett that runs
to that.
down to.
no.
Amos
No,
Garrett's
no, Amos
farther
Garrett
Amos Garrett runs perpendicular straight from
Right.
Carpaccio.
comes out.
I meant the Amos Garrett Street End Park.
Maybe I should give this
Amos
to you.
Garrett
Okay,
Street End
this is Amos Garrett right here.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, let me see, now let me get my bearings here.
And this road and this road. Get
comfortable.
They connect.
This is the street I guess I'm thinking of. This one.
Yeah. I don't think we're, yeah. I don't
That's
think we're
not in it.
I don't think
Okay,
that
okay,
connects.
okay. I don't even know.
That's German Street.
So
Sure.
up on
Yeah,
the
that's a
screen
dead-end
is,
street.
It's a dead-end street.
We pulled up
Right,
the,
Right, and it's
German
very,
Street.
it's very, it's not in it, I'm sorry.
No worries.
No,
read
this
the
here,
map wrong.
this here is referencing when you're coming off Spa Road, before you get to the circle, there's that little cutoff, like
Yeah.
access road that they discourage you from cutting down over to West Street because it's really just 5 homes and Prism is right over there. So you go out to the circle instead, you bypass that. And There's
Right.
that little like,
He's talking about
yeah,
this
so
little
there's
thing
only
here.
like 5
yeah.
home sites in there. I think I'm with Quentin in that I think it's fine for well, I like MX because I like the circle eventually becoming
That's her.
that,
Yeah.
but grandfathering in what's there right now to let it, as to use Quentin's words, to let it go through its life cycle. I think that it just gives enough flexibility. It's only like 5 properties that are right there.
Yeah, and when we say compliant non-conforming, that's essentially what that is. It's you're grandfathering something in place so that it's allowed to be there. It stays there. Nobody is coming around trying to knock it down or something. It gets to live through its life cycle, and when it gets redeveloped towards the end of that life cycle, it gives any person coming in more flexibility.
Fair.
Sounds good. I mean, we agree. That's, it's, again, very hard to anticipate when, if something might happen, change here, but we think that kind of,
Moving to Hike districts.
yeah,
Is
so
that a
that's the next
discussion?
question. Yeah, that's the next question for this location, so,
1 second, if I can.
Yeah.
I think probably making sure that people, when we do talk about rezoning certain areas, completely understand that concept of compliant non-conforming. Because I think that could be scary to some people.
Right.
Being told that, their house is somehow
Right.
not being allowed or something, and that's not the case, right? But so it
Yeah.
is a messaging thing that we have to worry about.
that's right. I mean, our zoning code today is riddled with examples where a non-conforming use is in a particular zone. I mean, you look at the maritime zones where you have residential in some cases that wouldn't be allowed today. They're deemed we say deemed conforming, and in some cases, it can affect financing for a project, but that's not, with some of these, in this particular case, I don't think that would be an issue because these are just long time, I don't know if any of them have been sold recently, but that's sometimes a situation where somebody buys a property and if it's deemed conforming, but that use is no longer in that zone, then, it puts their financing at risk. There might be a clause in their loan or something. But what we should do, I'm not sure that it's not conforming. I think with MX, I think it does allow for attached houses. So I
Even
think
better,
it's,
'cause
yeah,
that
I don't,
It just gives them the flexibility without that worry.
I made a note to confirm that because I think these actually are consistent with the MX. It's just that it's not something we would necessarily encourage today.
These are
Right, yeah.
Townhomes in the MX currently
Right.
on West Street.
The sort of brownstone type, yeah. So that's, one thing we wouldn't allow in the MX is that surface parking lot in the front. I mean, we're trying to discourage that. It's not doesn't make for a very walkable place, et cetera. But townhome in general is allowed in the MX. So,
Height district.
yeah. So we should have probably noted on here, but you have houses on the back side of this that are just your typical, 2.5 story, single family detached houses. And then across the street, you have the Severn Bank building, which is, I think, 4 stories. And so, this site is a little bit of a transition between those two scales. Something to think about.
So you're suggesting 40.
We're actually not making a determination. We did not provide a recommendation for, that's really something to discuss. We didn't provide recommendation for height districts for any of these, so
I would think
we should have, but.
On that one would be the District 2, just to
Yeah.
step it down for what's behind it. And would be a nice transition to what's on Caraway Lane, if it were the District 2. Even though the bank building is the District 1, I think a little bit lower on the other side of the road is better.
We're open to it.
And it wouldn't be, it would also, I think of it as that would be the next increment of intensity beyond what's there now. If you allowed the height district 1 there, that to me is like two steps in intensity.
Well, and the Pizzuto homes are height district too. They're
That's right.
2, 3 stories plus the terrace stuff.
And I believe, I had to double check this, I believe there's actually a clause in the MX zoning regulations where if it's next to buildings that are of of a lower height, there has to be some sort of transition, to basically prevent that kind of shadow effect.
So wouldn't,
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
impinge on the existing little townhomes now and the entranceway to Maryland Hall? Okay, it's beginning to make some sense.
But that would be a good,
Okay?
transition.
Is there any appetite for not necessarily altering the boundaries of the height districts, but maybe bumping up the footage by, say, 5 to 8 feet for each one? That way we're just allowing, again, a little bit more flexibility. We're not necessarily changing a whole lot other than just bumping up the height districts just slightly.
We hadn't considered that. Something this group can consider.
And again, I'm not talking like even a full story, but
Right.
like 5 to 8 feet just gives a little bit extra, and even keeping the boundaries relatively similar or even the same, but allowing that growth over time.
Well, actually, I should have said, our phase 3 of this zoning unlocked initiative, we're actually working on standards for our mixed use corridor. So we're anticipating in phase 3 to actually start moving a lot of our zoning that's commercial or office today into mixed use. Those are the P zones and the B zones. And basically saying, well, office is sort of a strange use in today's market. I mean, there's still value to it, but you're starting to see office conversions to residential and different workplace ideas. And so we have an architectural consultant that we just brought on board that has done a lot of work with similar places on standards for mixed use. And we're going to be looking at these situations. And we could look at what is that relationship, if we were to go slightly higher, is that awkward? Does that make sense? It's definitely something we can study more, but yeah.
So the way, getting to Quentin's point about, 5 feet more on a height, it seems to me, when I look at those, the 3 districts really are like, the height district 3 is really 2.5 stories at 36 feet. 46 feet is 3.5 stories, and then 65 feet is 5 stories. So, adding 5 feet, it's sort of a fraction of a story in a sense, doesn't really get you anything.
Let's get into that later, based upon as we refine that next. Okay?
People get taller.
Okay, I lost it.
So we're actually on the BR page now. Another very small zone, only in a tiny corner of the city. It had an intent of helping to revitalize an area. It has not done that. It's actually kind of limited. In the case of one property owner who's been trying to do something with his property, it's kind of limited what he could do, and we've kind of learned what those constraints are recently. So this is near the corner of Clay Street and West Washington, right off of West Street. It's behind the garage, the Anne Arundel County garage. I'm blanking on the name. Somebody help me out. The large, behind People's Park.
County garage.
It's the county garage, yeah. Starts with a double.
Albert, no.
Starts with a W, I think. I'm blanking. But anyhow, the Stanton Center, the city's significant recreation community center, is part of this zone. That is where you see the label institutional. That just means it's a institutional use, government, social type use. There's actually a property next to the Stanton Center. It's kind of like a diagonal shaped lot that my cursor is. It's an Elks Lodge, I believe. And then you have along Clay Street near the intersection of West Washington, you have these essentially two-story commercial residential buildings. They have retail on the ground floor and apartments above. And then the garage is about 3.5 stories. I don't even think it's quite 4 stories, but I'm going to actually go to the, give you guys some more sense while we have this here. I'll go to a street view so you can see. So corner West Washington and Clay, you can see these buildings here, fairly low. I think they're primarily residential, but I think there might be some sort of office, commercial use on the ground floors. And then you have the parking garage here. I'll back up so you can get a better sense. But
So you said you've learned more about what they're trying to do, what a couple of property owners trying to do?
the property owner,
Do they want to go higher?
they want to do something that is essentially mixed use. These properties that you're seeing right here, and then I think it's these two that have the brick, and maybe this one with the gray siding, and then around the corner they have a couple properties that basically behind this brick building. So they're interested in doing apartments over retail.
So they're really trying to get to 3 stories?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was legislation in the fall
Yeah, I
that
remember we,
adjusted the BR to allow for that. So they can get to 3 stories. It was actually an issue where the floor area ratio allowed them to get to 3 stories, but they were limited to, or did not allow them to get, they were allowed to go to 3 stories, but the floor area ratio did not allow. It was an inconsistency. So we corrected that.
yeah, my comment was, why not just make it MX?
Yeah, yeah. And then we found that they were also looking at just doing pure apartments, no retail on the ground floor, but that's not allowed in the BR. You can only do apartments over retail, I think. So that's or is one way or the other. There was some kind of awkward missing piece. I think actually
Because the businesses there have never done well.
it's on the sheet, the use table shows it. It's, the BR does not allow for, it does not allow for duplexes, it does not allow for dwellings over non-residential uses, which would be like retail, which is strange. It doesn't allow for townhouses, which is single-family attached. So it's missing, it's odd. You know, I think for a zone that was created to be a kind of a revitalization zone, it's missing a lot of the flexibility that you would want,
Yeah.
right? So it did have some parking waiver type language that I think is also part of the MX that was kind of key to when the MX was created to be a little bit more permissive on that, where I think the parking that you provide can be within 200 feet of your residence. So I understand it's kind of an urban context. So,
It sounds like MX District 2
yeah,
is,
that would make sense, I think, here. Yeah.
So the parking lot be used for that.
I think so. I think they would certainly, yeah, Whitmore. There it is. Whitmore.
Somebody knew.
Yeah. So they would certainly negotiate, I think, some parking use of that.
There
Or
seems like there's plenty of parking there.
yeah, the Gott's Court is also just a few is 2 blocks away. It's yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Knighton Garage is not far. I don't know what the anyhow. So
That would certainly help this area, I think, tremendously.
Yeah.
For so many reasons, yeah.
Even if it's just all residential.
I think businesses, I think they kind of do. We don't spend a lot of time there, but they, yeah.
Like the idea of having business bottom floor and then residential.
depends on what the
Right,
business
that's a business, and, you know, the city has to be flexible on some things. I remember there was a caterer trying to do some things there, and they didn't let them do it because grease trap issue, and, you know, and he was doing very well. So, you know, the city has to work with people to.
yeah. Well, now this gets a little more complex. This is a large zone. This is also just in the keeping with this theme of zones that are only apply to one specific spot in the city.
This is my favorite one. Just,
I actually don't have a great story behind the origins of this one. Did you come across anything?
just, if you look at it on the
I
grand,
believe B3CD came about in the
plan.
80s. Part of the 1983 code revisions, just to expand the business districts, because while we have B1, B2, B3, there were actually 5 different business districts, and then they changed it to B1, B2, B3, B3CD, and BR. So instead of being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Still 5.
Yeah, but
Just
different
use
names.
letters instead of numbers. It sounded better.
Yeah.
CD stands for commercial design. I think it was intended to be. Yeah, basically. Well, actually, I like reminding folks of my age who grew up in Annapolis that this is where the toy store was, juvenile sales.
Oh, yeah, kids now sell.
Which sounds like a place where you're selling kids, but you know, it's
Never thought of that.
it was a strange, you know, warehouse toy store. But
Jeffrey sales.
so today we did put a couple of heights on here on the adjacent properties because that's a key dynamic to this location where on the West Street side, it's facing properties that are primarily detached buildings that many of which look like single family.
Yeah, they look like these that are on West Street, but this is a different.
That are, you know, that kind of meet that definition of the Height District 3, the like lower Height District. And then on the backside of, I shouldn't say the backside, the Smithville Street side of this zone, which is the lower volume street behind this large area. You have even lower heights, 1 to 2 story houses. Smithville is that sort of cut through street from Spa Road. It goes past the Ceremony Coffee and Bates Heritage Center. Yeah, so that's the Bates Heritage Center, the former high school. So
A weird turnoff.
in thinking about this, I mean, we feel very confident that MX would make sense here, but the Height District question is something that we think is worth more discussion for sure. You know, I think very simplistic level, I mean, having some portion of it of this large zone adjacent to the streetscape that's that lower height would seem to make sense, and then get some transition to the higher allowances towards the middle of the site. But, you know, I think exactly where those lines are, I mean, you can think about the adjacent lots are, I think, about 100 feet deep, you know. So you can think about that as kind of the standard residential lot that's across the street, across West Street or across Smithville Street. Maybe not as deep, but it's,
Well, you
Yeah.
definitely need to terrace it, but it
Yeah.
could definitely handle, the whole interior of this could handle really 4 or 5 stories. I mean, this whole zone here is serviced by public transportation. It's next to senior center is walkable. The library is walkable. The liquor store is walkable. I mean, there's a lot here that's really, that makes it really attractive for some really dense, really. So, but I think that you're right, it's the height that would constrain it, but also give it, you know, what we want.
I think the 50-year lease constrains it more than anything else.
we have heard that I think it applies to the Coons Toyota.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
poured a fortune
Yeah.
into those buildings.
So I think, you know, that's such a large sort of contiguous piece of land that I think the height is going to sort of depend on what you did with it. So if you did it, and presumably there's, for the car dealerships, I don't know if there's like one holding company that owns all of that, or are they all sort of a couple of separate companies, or I don't really know that. But just for the sake of argument, let's say that could all be sort of developed as one, say the car dealer said we're going to go someplace else. And that all was available to be all redeveloped at the same time. If you did it as one big development, I think the heights you would do would be different than if you said, well, it's such a big piece, let's sort of break it up into 3 blocks that's more compatible with what's like on the other side of West Street.
Right, right.
And I think if you did that, then the height you'd end up with would be lower.
Yeah.
Because you'd have, you wouldn't have the ability to terrace it and all that kind of stuff. So you might, if you envision breaking it up that way, you might want to keep it at the, the District 3 or
Two or
maybe
three.
2. But if you're going to, develop it all as one thing, that where you could have it be much higher in the center, terrace down, then maybe you could go to District 1 with those other caveats.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, but
but
you
I-
have to
we don't
draw
know.
those lines.
I mean, we don't really know
Yeah.
what the fate of that parcel is going to be. And it may come up, pieces of it may come up before other pieces, and
Yeah.
so that's a tricky thing.
But,
And frankly, I don't, if I could wave a magic wand, I wouldn't want to see that whole thing developed as one large
Well, you'd have
development.
a town center in Homewood.
Because I think it would stand out like a sore thumb
Yeah.
to make it look like a parole town center in the middle there. I just don't think.
That said, it
fit.
might be the only way to get coons out of there in the next 50 years.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I recognize some economics. play
don't forget,
here,
we
but-
did, the Acton Landing at one time. It's hard to believe the hospital
Yeah.
was once there. It's possible to kind of create that granular neighborhood as an infill. It's very challenging. That was a national award-winning project, but yeah.
It's not the path of least resistance.
but if you lay the height limits on it now, then people either, whether it's piecemeal or whether it's going to be piecemeal because there's so many owners. Yeah, well, you
That's
have
what
the
I-
Luskin family.
There
who
are-
owns the- yeah,
There
there's
are,
so many
yeah.
owners.
There are.
There are definitely some
Yeah.
multiple owners.
So I would, the height limits are really
So is the
important.
lease across the board on all these
Is what?
properties? I'm wondering if the lease is uniform across all, I don't think anyone knows it.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, if you said it multiple.
Well, we know that,
Oh,
across Russell Street, you have the former Luskin's location. Now it's
that's where where
the big screens, or I don't know
big
what it is
screen,
now. Yeah.
that's Luskin's, and the Luskin family still
And
owns it,
the
I'm sure.
the paper company and Ceremony Coffee is behind that. So those are different owners. Then you have
Oh, why not
Toyota, and then you have
Why not, at this point in time, given life cycles, why not include the Ceremony Coffee and Post Haste?
I think we are, but I think what we may have mistaken, there's a parking lot that we should have included that is, well, it's not zoned as B3CD. That's the weird thing. The parking lot behind Ceremony that's used for Post Haste mailing, I don't know that Ceremony actually uses it. I don't know who uses that parking lot, but it's in a different zoning district, even though it is part of that Ceremony Coffee Post Haste building. So
So you have included the Post
Yeah.
Haste building,
we did, and
not the
then
tiny little parking lot in front of it.
it's actually a large parking lot. No, the one beat to the left of it. So that like notch, that's the parking lot that's that we didn't. That's zoned, we think, R2. So that might be a correction that we could do as part of this.
Yeah,
But
there's some open space there too.
it's not a parking lot that we see as used heavily, and it actually causes a lot of flooding
I
today.
can't imagine what that is.
Yeah. If you sit, there's a community park, right behind Ceremony Coffee, and if you look, you can see that parking lot. Let me pull that up.
It's not what you're including, it's just what's zoned right now.
Right.
What you're including on the
Right.
map here is what's actually zoned. It's not a choice.
The spool, the zoom is opposite the way I have it on my computer.
Oh, the parking lot behind it.
Yeah, that's what we're talking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of
never
odd.
noticed that.
And I'm just recognizing that now that there's,
That's zoned differently?
it's zoned differently, and
Well, and
There's a community, folk
Included.
community park.
there's
there.
even,
it's tiny.
there's even kind of like a undeveloped space next to that
Yeah.
parking lot that I'm not sure the story behind that, but
All right,
yeah,
It's a little green space.
it does. It is a green space, and maybe it's used by the adjacent properties. I don't know, but it just looks like lawn, and so I mean, it does make sense to probably include that as part of this rezoning. I think it's kind of like that would be a split zoned parcel. That's what we would call that, because that parking lot is definitely owned by the same people that own Post Haste Ceremony Building.
Oh, maybe not.
No, it is actually. We met with them because actually there's a big flooding problem that if you've ever been at Ceremony Coffee after a rainstorm, it's actually coming from the roof of that building and the parking lot. It kind of comes down through that little pocket park and then into the parking lot. So we've looked at that. but,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a
Yeah.
good correction. But anyway, height limits, I think, are very important around this.
Let me go back.
Height
to
limits
that.
are important.
So, I mean, I think one point that Alex brought up that I think is a good one is that the dynamics change depending on how much space you're redeveloping, you know? And so, I mean, there could be a requirement of a certain height, no matter what, on the frontages, the roadway frontages, but then depending on the other the width of your parcel, that then changes the height allowance, you know, so
Yes,
if,
scale.
right. So if you're just doing a slender lot from West Street to Smithville, that it would be odd to get to that highest height perhaps, I'm not sure, but if it's a multiple parcels going from West Street to Smithville, then you can kind of have that, that height change would make more sense, I guess. So,
How are these on the other side of the circle on West Street? How were those height determinations made? Do we know? Because they're pretty piecemeal, but it looks
Well,
nice
you know, I think
going down West Street from the circle down to Church Circle,
Oh,
My-
down past
that's on that
lemongrass
page.
and all that, which is
That's
the
on
other
that-
MX
That's on the
district.
height district page. If you
It's
look.
here, all these. I'm
My
just saying, like, you
guess-
can see this is District 3, and now we're in District 2, and this is District 1, and you got this dropped in District 1 in here, and it's just like very piecemeal. There's not, it was not planned as such.
I know, but that's what gives it its character.
That's what I agree.
Oh.
I think it's
oh.
nice. I wish if you could somehow do that here, but you can't chop this up and say, you can only do 46 and you can only do 65. Like, I think that's
Well, the other thing that's interesting, when you look at the height districts, and this is just another level of the complexity of the process here, with something like Park Place, even though it's all, and this is really helpful to know, it's all in that peak height district up to 65 feet, but they did step back. You know, you have that by the plaza there, it's lower, and then it steps back. I'll go to that just to kind of remind you. I'm sure you can picture what I'm talking about. But it's, and so this is something that happens, you know, during the site plan review process with the planning commission, you know, where even if they're allowed,
65 doesn't mean we have to give them
heck am
65
I?
for the whole project.
I'm going
I
down.
wouldn't want to see something the scale of Park Place.
No.
That's what I'm
in there.
saying. Town
I think
center
it would-
in Homewood doesn't
No, it
work.
wouldn't.
Yeah. But, you know, I think there was a sensitivity here where they acknowledged that building up to, like 5 stories right on West Street was not desirable, perhaps. And so and having an urban plaza was a desire, and then they step up a little bit. So I think that site design plan process allows for some nuance, you know, but I wouldn't, I think, yeah. Now, this is an opportunity to sort of say, well, unconditionally, like, you might want to have the lower heights close to West Street or close to Smithville, and not throw that up to what happens during the site plan process. That could be but
A constraint, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So we may not, what I would recommend is we're going to have this architecture consultant working with us. And I think what they could do are some scenarios on this site, model it, different heights, like a 3-dimensional model. And we actually brought this up. We had a kickoff meeting with them recently. We brought this site up, and we were asking them, from a design standards perspective for MX, are these kind of large lot, does it make sense to focus on these large lots that are going to be done maybe all at one time, maybe not? But they said, actually, it does, because there's so many different scenarios that you might want. It might be helpful to actually see how it could be broken up. And I think they were saying it might make more sense to look at multiple buildings on this lot that are of a certain size rather than one that's really big and one that's really small. Just different scenarios. So
It would be helpful.
yeah. Okay. I think we're going to have to come back to this one anyhow, but
Yeah,
So-
I mean, my only other thought is just the more flexible it would be for the future, the better to get a 50-year leaseholder out of there. Because I'd rather have anything besides
Is it a new
freaking
fi-
car dealerships in that
Is it a
space.
new 50-year lease, right? Or are they
I
halfway
don't,
into it?
nobody seems to know. Eric, we talked about this last
we're
time.
going to find out. We'll look into it.
I know they put a lot of money into it, but their whole model, their business model is dying. Carvana and all these guys that are bringing cars to you now, we're buying cars off the internet.
Yeah.
You don't need to inventory 50 F-150s
I
in order to sell a car.
totally agree.
It's such a
They
waste
think
of
They're
space.
making money on their services, but that's in the middle of the whole goddamn
Yeah.
thing. I don't know, it's good, but I agree, it's good, it's changing, and it would clamp MX on it, so there's incentive to
That's what I'm
start
saying.
doing things.
And the more flexibility you can afford the zoning, provided it still has to come through
Yeah, let's
proper
get it done.
channels, then
Right, now's the
I'm
time.
more
We know this.
inclined to leave it a little more open.
It's time, we need, all right, C2Ps, is that where we're going?
It's 9 o'clock. Just want to make sure you have a little bit more stamina.
Yeah,
We're kind of getting into downtown. I think just to kind of provide an overview of downtown, we think that the recommendations for C2P are pretty straightforward, but with the and also with the C1A, that's the other one we're looking at consolidating. But we have a text amendment related to C1A and C1 that would be focused on the kind of unit size that would be allowed. And that's why in the packet there are some sheets that get into unit sizes. And that's something that we may not have enough time to get into all of tonight, but it's definitely on our minds. The fact that, I'll just lead into that a little bit. The downtown area is our densest, most urban core of the city, and yet the minimum unit size for most of the residential area in the downtown is 1,800 square feet, which is kind of a suburban house, So as we're trying to address housing issues, as we're trying to bring back more full-time residents downtown to sort of counterbalance the short-term rentals or to discourage them in times, we need to have more flexibility on the kind of unit sizes that are allowed there. We can't bring back the neighborhood, so to speak, without having more range of unit types to address our housing needs and the household sizes, and whether somebody's single or a couple or a young family. I mean, they may not need 1,800 square feet, and frankly, most of the properties in downtown don't have that kind of square footage. So that's part of C1A, but I just wanted to put that out there because that's definitely on our minds if we can get to it.
So what's your proposal for for C1 for minimum.
Let's actually jump ahead to that because I think it's a more interesting conversation while we have the energy.
I mean, based on the things you've shown here, there's a lot of stuff in about, seems to be about the average of about 800 square feet. But would you go down as far as 650 or 400?
I can grab these guys.
Knowing 800 is going to be sort of the median?
We can actually grab the height.
I mean, as a single person, I could easily live in 650 square feet. It's bigger than a lot of apartments I've lived in.
I can live on a boat, so I'm fine
Yes.
with less than.
My van's 60 square feet.
Oh, it should be. Oh, no, we don't have the apartment. This is the one, just to kind of show where it would happen. I have it on.
106, 108, Annapolis Street. Those 800, those are going for $300 a square foot. So there's, yeah, 800, it's or more. So 800
So-
square feet is almost.
I own
Just-
14 Annapolis
On
Street.
the sheet for Green Street is going for $999,000 and 900.
Where is that? On Green Street?
Yeah, one of the examples on the sheet, the page you had on the other side with the 6 listings.
Oh, yeah,
One of them is on Green Street, and that one is going for $1 less than $1 million currently.
I looked at it.
Bargain.
I looked at it.
So,
Yeah, I'm
yeah, Alexis did kind of like a market
just signed a
sample
contract to buy a new
of,
place, Murray Hills. Trying.
yeah. There are listings out there that we can use as a guide. They don't always provide square footages, but Alexis found a bunch that do have the square footages. So we can kind of get a sense of what's being offered in terms of units. These are all, for the most, I think these are all, they're not all C1A, but they're ones that we are suggesting should become part of the C1 zone. And so it's kind of helpful to see they're not conforming currently, these smaller units. The C1 does allow for multifamily. So I'm going to go back to this. The benefit, the largest residential zone in the downtown area is the C1. It's been pretty successful in terms of kind of maintaining character. I don't hear any negatives about it. It's fairly permissive in terms of the types of residential uses that are allowed. There's a chart on here that shows it does multifamily. Actually, no, it's actually not that permissive in terms of, you can't do duplexes, you can't do single family detached. Wait a second. Some of this might not be. I think some of these might be. Yeah, we'll have to double check this, but because the majority of the C1 is single family detached, but then there are some attached. If you think of Prince George Street, it's a ton of historic townhomes. I want to confirm
4 years.
the use table that's on this chart. It may be off, but what we do know is that C1 allows for multifamily, whereas C1A does not. C1A was created, and you can see all of the areas marked in red here are C1A zones that were created in the early 90s. This was,
That's what it is. So it does allow for multifamily. It's just we have another use in the use table that is multifamily for 6 or fewer. That's another thing that has to be cleaned up in the use table.
right,
But that is not allowed
right.
or not included in the C1.
Yeah, that's weird. multifamily and then multifamily containing 6 or 4 dwelling units. That's weird. That doesn't make
Yeah,
sense to me.
it depends on what we're figuring out, looking at the uses for these different districts, is some of the districts include uses and others don't include the same, even though they may be defined the same. So it's more of a clerical thing to go through to make sure the uses between all of the zoning districts are consistent.
But what was the point of C1A?
You want to explain the origins of it?
So this is, C1A is what came out of the Ward 1 study. It was a preservation attempt for the C1 district to limit non-conforming or what was deemed non-suitable uses in C1. And so to preserve the understood character at that time for what C1 was, they created C1A.
It was 2004.
92.
That was the 92 one.
What
So they didn't want-
non-suitable uses?
So it was I guess, an expansion of multifamily, so apartment units in what were single-family homes, as well as like apartments or other commercial uses coming into the residential district. So there's C1 and C2. One is supposed to be commercial, one is supposed to be residential, but they were starting to mix.
They were also seeing, you know, some of the properties weren't well kept, and this was basically an effort to make the historic district look nicer, be more occupied by, you know, they wanted people who would spend more money on, you know, preserving these buildings. I mean, that attract people who were historic preservationists. I mean, that was the stated intent, you know, to really focus on the single family owners who would come in and help be, you know, stewards of these properties that weren't being well maintained in some cases when they were rental properties and so forth. And so today, you know, different dynamic. Seems like we have no shortage of people who want to come in and be that kind of steward, but we also have a real diminishing variety of housing types in the city. You know, we're not creating more apartments. We're not creating that variety that we need. And here we have, in the downtown area, we have an incredible existing inventory of different housing types that most of which don't conform to the zoning code. And so the idea partly is to say, hey, you know, what do we need to do to make those more legal and give people some options to, you know, to reconfigure layouts for different household types. And, you know, we have, I think the land costs have changed so dramatically that it's just not, it's not likely that somebody's going to buy one of these properties and then turn it into like a, you know, poorly maintained place. You know, it's like there's a lot of people have moved here expecting something better for downtown. So, you know, we don't have that risk as much as it was maybe in the 80s and 90s. So
it's the impetus is to permit more apartments.
yeah, and at least give the option. We highlighted on past presentation. Well, actually, we gave a work session to the city council back in February last month, and we showed some examples from Prince George Street. There's a number of larger buildings that are subdivided into 4 units, 5 units, 6 units. They're all non-conforming. They're all in that C1 zone. And so it's sort of like in the same way that in the 90s, we said as a city, we created a C1A zone to privilege the single family occupancy. Maybe today we privilege the variety of housing types, you know, and say it's not gonna have an adverse impact if we know we need more residents, we need more full-time residents downtown. I mean, seems like something everybody agreed on during the comprehensive planning process. Particularly with the short-term rental influx, and that's being controlled better now with the recent legislation, but so we certainly agree that you can't relax these uses and still have the short-term rental be a concern. You know, that has to be managed at the same time, but
That's a separate issue.
yeah, it's a separate
I
issue.
think if we're going to be true to the comprehensive plan and increase the density of housing, and there's no more dirt to build on, so the only thing that you can do is allow for apartments. So we were allowing multi-unit places return to their former glory of single-family homes and not the other way around, but it flies in the face of the 2040 plan at this point and the affordability of Annapolis generally. So teachers and nurses and firefighters can't live in the area that they serve. So this could potentially open that up.
It could, you know, I think downtown's not going to be for everybody. It kind of self-selects, you know, people who aren't necessarily going to have their own parking spot, you know, right in front of their house. You know, it's urban living, but we think that it's pretty attractive to a lot of people, and I guess I get worried about the consolidation of unit. You know, you have a building might have 3 units, and we're seeing those get consolidated to 1 unit, you know, and there's nothing that stops that. That's a hard thing to prevent, but partly it's if those 3 units aren't allowed today, then you're certainly not going to get somebody to buy that building with the intent of, they can keep it going as a non-conforming use as long as it doesn't lapse, it doesn't become vacant for more than a year, but.
So what's your thought on minimum,
Well-
the minimum lot size in C1?
So we don't have a fixed number in here, but what we're seeing is that there's a range, like the studio apartments are like 300 to 450 square feet. The 1 bedrooms are like 450, 500 to 800 square feet. And then 2 bedrooms are like 700 to 1,000 square feet. You know, and the way the C2 district works, which is Main Street and a large portion of Maryland Avenue, where we're encouraging apartments above retail. With those, that's the only place in the city where you're granted very small unit sizes. You essentially 300 square feet for a studio apartment, 450, I think, for a 1 bedroom, and then it's 150. Yeah, and then it's 150 square feet for every additional bedroom. And so, in a way, it's like, how many of those can you fit in your building? That's the logic is, you can have all studio apartments if you want, or you could have a range. It's just those, it's tied more to building code, health, fire, safety type. So those are kind of the minimum sizes
Is that
for
where
that.
that comes up, not in the zoning code?
No, it comes up in the zoning code in the bulk standards for the C2. But the question is, so with the C1, so if we say all of C1A becomes C1, then we say, well, so that would allow them to be that would allow for multifamily, but then you're still limited by this 1,800 square foot threshold. Is it too much to take the standards that are for the C2, which is Main Street? Because that's really intended, I mean, that's a commercial street. Is that appropriate for, you know, these residential streets? Maybe not. But what we're seeing are,
But I think for certain streets it is.
yeah, maybe like a pink,
Maryland Avenue is.
Maryland Avenue, right,
It does suit,
right,
you know.
right.
So
right.
maybe it's sort of that you do pick and choose where.
You know, I think the way you calculate the number of units that are allowed everywhere else is you have that sort of minimum lot or minimum unit size. So like we were talking about the R zones before, where it's like in the R2, you're taking, how many 5,400 square foot lots can you fit on that property? That's how you calculate the number of units. So here, most of these properties can't accommodate even an 1,800 square foot unit. So it seems like at least thinking about half of that would make sense. You know, that's, and 900, but even less than that would probably, you know, I mean, I think of it, if you think about the one bedroom apartment being as small as 700 square feet, you know, that might be an appropriate unit. But, so that's the thing we're kind of mulling. We did this market study, we kind of looked at, you know, what's on Zillow, and there are quite a few units in that sort of 600 to 900 square foot range that would be perfectly great units for a lot of folks. So it's a challenge. I think we want to, what we don't want to do is imply that, I mean, what happens typically in these situations is that people fear the worst, you know, and they say, oh, you're going to allow for studio apartments everywhere, later, like 450 square feet. And so suddenly everything is going to become studio apartments.
Tomorrow.
Right, tomorrow. We know that's not going to happen. Well, there might be a market for some studio apartments. It's still going to be based on market demand and what are the, you know, certain locations where it makes sense, and maybe one's, you know, but there's certainly a lot of demand for 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. And so, I mean, there could be if people have concern about, you know, studio apartments taking over or something, you know, there could be a threshold where I just don't know how you would structure that, but just we're trying not to create more complicated rules from a situation that is already pretty complicated. So we're trying to create more flexibility, if anything. So
I mean, it would seem you would just want to lower it to the lowest number that is feasible for a studio apartment and let the market figure itself out. I think that some of the challenges I know the number one challenge you're going to run into, what's that one? If you put 4 units into a 1-unit place?
No, I think you're gonna have people just saying you're not attracting families downtown anymore. It's gonna be a single family.
That's one.
It's just,
I
it's gonna
think,
be a
I think
party town.
parking is going to be your number one complaint. People are going to be up in arms about parking. You try to do one little tiny thing in Eastport and you see what happens over there. Imagine if you're suddenly turning 1 unit into 4 and everybody gets a parking space because they have a unit.
I think it's one of the best things we can do to support our downtown businesses, right? As Mr. Lashinsky said, so many of the residents in those homes that live down there right now are snowbirds. They're not there the whole year, or they're doing or they're doing the short-term rentals, something like this. I think one of the best things we can do is get more young people living in and around the downtown area to support our businesses downtown.
Agreed. It's not affordable otherwise, unless you do this.
that's a great point. I mean, we encounter so many people that they want to have the locally oriented serving retail, right? They don't want the retail only driven by the tourists. They want stuff that actually has some appeal to people who live downtown, and you need people to work in those places that aren't having to drive like, you know, an hour to get, or a half hour to get to work. And so, yeah, that's a great point. In addition to having full-time residents who could be consumers and patrons of those places. So, yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like there's some comfort in like going down, you know, to like 600 square feet or even less in some cases, you know. Yeah. Yeah.
I think 600 is, even 5 would work.
5, yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. I think the market figures out, right, is, no one's gonna build something that they think won't be taken up. And so people will build, apartments that will then kind of direct the market to a size that facilitates a lot of diversity, which I think that we're doing the opposite now, right? Like, you have to be able to afford an $800,000 house, and you have to be able to afford a certain large house, even if you don't want one. I love the idea of putting more diversity into the market and letting market forces kind of decide what gets taken.
And this is
Yeah.
all in the historic district, so,
That's right.
you know, all of those rules are gonna apply, so if you,
That's right.
you know, if you had something that you maybe wanted to convert from single family to 2 or 3 units, you know, it's not as simple, it's not simple as just doing it. You're gonna have all of these other things that at least affect the external appearance of the.
That's a great point. I should have,
So, I mean,
led with
that
that.
alone should be enough to assuage any fears about this all happening tomorrow.
yeah, and it's true. That is a great,
Change.
that is a very significant constraint on anything happening downtown, is that the historic district overlay zone dictates or guides the exterior of every building within the downtown. And,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
and,
just sort of,
yeah,
almost in a way, just lets what's there be
yeah,
legally.
yeah.
So it sounds like there's consensus on consolidated, getting rid of C1.
Yeah.
What remains is living size, unit size,
Yeah.
okay?
Yep.
And that's what you're pondering.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
All right.
That's it. And I appreciate the support for that, because that's it won't make much difference, frankly, if we change the C1A to the C1 and then you don't change that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just also want to add, you know, there are a number of very large buildings in the C1 that are ideal multifamily buildings, particularly the ones close to the Naval Academy on Hanover Street at the end of Maryland Avenue in Hanover. We showed some examples at the,
They got one, right?
yeah, there's a, and
Gate 3 out there.
it's just,
That was wonderful.
it's crazy that multifamily is not allowed for some of those buildings that, they're multifamily today. So they're just not conforming to the code. Yeah. So we think this is a pretty proactive effort here. Well, let's just, the last thing is the C2P. And this is pretty straightforward. I don't,
It seems like a no-brainer.
yeah, it's the only thing that makes it, it's not a one-size-fits-all here. There's 3 areas that are C2P today. Let me actually put,
And I remember hearing this one example of C2P doesn't allow dwellings above the ground floor of non-residential uses. So there's something on Duke of Gloucester that, like, you basically can't do anything with that property. It's silly.
yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm basing this
Yeah, so
no-brainer on.
Duke of Gloucester is
Restrictive.
is one cluster of this C2. This was created at the same time as the C1A Conservation Office District, so in the early 90s. And along Upper Duke of Gloucester, closer to Church, between Conduit and Church Circle, on the side backing up to Main Street. That's the primary area, and then there's a couple properties next to the former bank building at Church Circle that are law offices today. Actually, I'll just show you real quick what I'm talking about since we don't have good images on the plans. basically across from the Maryland Inn on Duke of Gloucester, you have these office buildings right here, or law offices, longtime tenants, some additional law offices in here. It's easy to imagine this as like a residential, and if these law offices ever vacated, that might be the best use here. And then that's the end of the C2P on that side, and then the rest of it is on the other side below Maryland Inn. This is blacked out, but you know, so it's a lot of stuff that looks kind of residential, but actually has a lot of office mixed in. And we think that the C2 is what you have on Main Street. We think that that would provide some more flexibility here. It won't have the impacts on the residential area because these are backing up to Main Street, these properties. So there's actually a few social clubs here that are kind of interesting, like this building, former social clubs that are vacant, are very limited use today. So that's one cluster. And then the other on Franklin Street, near the former hospital, it looks almost universally residential along this strip. Actually, there's the bottom image here. I'll go to the street view just so you can see, but it's an area that feels residential and therefore makes sense as that C1. There's only one property that is actually. Yeah, so this building here is a kind of an event space.
It's my buddy's house.
Oh, okay,
It's
yeah.
his business.
Does somebody live there too, or is it only event space? I mean, I think our understanding is that it's mixed residential and commercial, so the event
He had a rough
space.
divorce, and he ended up
Okay,
living there for
okay.
a little while.
So,
Been a couple events in there.
It's amazing space in there, what he did with it. It was the Artemis building before that. It was Debbie Siebert and her lobbyist group was in there for years. But he took it and turned it into he's a consultant for restaurants and bars. He works with
Sorry,
CEOs, he does consulting.
I should go back while you're talking about it.
retreats.
Yeah, this is the house we're talking about. So, this is the one parcel on this block that we understand to be have some sort of commercial use. It's this event space where they host events. This is Franklin. So, on the opposite side, you have the former hospital site, which is now condos. It was part of this big redevelopment that's been pretty successful. And then you have basically a lot of these were former medical offices. So back when the hospital was there, that was kind of the purpose. That's why this was C2P, because it was medical offices. And a lot of that stuff has changed. So this building, which seems like a dead ringer for an office building, is now condos. And the primary entrance on the other side, I think on Dean Street. And then up closer to Cathedral, you have a house on the corner that is 3 units today. It fronts Franklin Street right here. But then next to it, you have a couple of buildings that are offices. And so what we're saying is, if we go back to the plan, the 2 properties that front Cathedral Street right here, we're saying should stay as professional office. Now, granted, we are going to be moving towards the P becoming something more mixed use, but we're just trying to consolidate right now. And just, if the C2P goes away, it needs to become something else in these locations. And so the P seems to make sense for just these 2 properties. And then everything that fronts Franklin would be C1, which would allow all of that to continue doing what it's doing. I'll double check that event space would still be conforming, but I think it would be. The C1 allows for things that are sort of compatible with, residential area. And then, let's see, the last, oops. The last site is this odd one. I'll go back to the main. It's this one on Hanover Street next to the Naval Academy. It was formerly a place called Buzzy's Pizza. Apparently it was a popular place. But today it's just a vacant one-story office building that seems kind of like an opportunity. It's squeezed between other properties that seems like they could be multifamily. And let me see, sorry. Go to the street view here. Shoot, straight up. Sorry. A little farther down here. Yeah. So you have the Navy wall on the back here, and then come get in there. It's this building right here, and so, yeah, so this is the building we talked about earlier, this is C1A, which doesn't allow for multifamily, odd, with this strange appendage behind it.
Didn't that used to be Buzzy's Pizza?
No, actually, this is the building right here that is today C2P Conservation Office Zone. We're saying it should be C2, which would be kind of a mixed use zone. It's like what you find on Main Street. It would be, so I mean, it would be within an area that is primarily residential. So it would, whatever it does would have to really be compatible. But we feel like the process that we have here would allow for that. You know, that this is a very engaged population around here. So I don't foresee. We just think for a site like this that's clearly not contributing right now, for that to become something that, you know, really adds value in this location, giving it some flexibility that the C2 allows would be good. So, yeah.
You know who owns it?
Do not. Should find out though.
Well, because I think Hollander owns it.
Oh, okay.
The big one.
Oh, the big one. Yeah, the big one.
The big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's his single family.
So I was just wondering if you had that one too,
We'll find out. We can-
Probably.
which would mean it's not going anywhere.
But sounds like there's some agreement that this C2 would make sense for this odd site. Yeah.
Totally. So how long ago was that Buzzy's Pizza?
Could have been as long back as the 80s. I don't know when it stopped. I don't remember it either, but John Tower, I think, remembers it. Yeah, but so I don't know. I'm curious what led to its demise, but you know,
It's not a very high traffic site.
yeah. It's definitely out of the way, right? They wouldn't need Pizzagate anymore.
Yeah.
That's the. I just learned that I didn't realize they refer to this one gate to the academy as Pizzagate because there's a slot in the gate that is designed so you can fit a pizza
You
through.
can put a pizza through it.
Yeah,
It's a better pizza gate than one we
yeah,
know now.
right. All right, well, it's pretty late here. As you can see, we're all pretty exhausted. Sorry. Reading the room, trying to, but that's it. I mean, we're going to come back to you all again. So, I mean, I think we got through a lot tonight, and we can summarize. And there's a few things we'll revisit, but it's quite a lot of input here. So we really appreciate it. And it's all going to get well documented. And so, yeah.
I like it.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Nice to visit.
These
Thank
were
you.
very helpful to reproduce.
Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful.
Great.
Nice,
That concludes our work session.
nice.
How many formal conclusions do we?
I'll just, for anybody who's still watching at home or who watches the video, I just want to remind folks that we have these public meetings coming up March 30th and 31st, Bush Library on the 30th, Pip Moyer on the 31st, 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be sending out the announcements in the next couple days digitally and putting them in different locations. And so on the website, Zoning Unlocked, we have the main website that you can just Google Annapolis Zoning Unlocked and you'll find it. So, yes, that's the schedule.
Does anybody text Madeline? Just tell her
I will email her now.
she's
MIT.
She's probably watching.